David, hello.
Hello, Jim. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. It is good to see you, my friend.
Always pleasure to see you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is kind of fun that we're starting up a podcast together.
It's finally happening, right? We had so many good conversations through the years, and then I moved away, and it's been almost 5 years, I think, since we were on the same town. Yeah, and and it's time to reconnect, and so many times we had so many good conversations, like, maybe other people would benefit from the back and forth, from the different backgrounds that we have, and actually the beautiful part is where we converge in so many of our ideologies and conversations. So, hey, why don't we tell people who we are?
Great idea. Great idea. So, Rabbi David Cohen Enriquez, why don't you go first? Because when we met, we were both ministers in Marblehead. You were a rabbi at the temple here, and I'm still actually at the location where I was at Clifton Lutheran Church. But tell us a little bit about your background before I met you.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Panama City, Panama. So this is not a New Jersey accent, what you're hearing. I've lived in the United States since 2003. Went to school there, Hebrew College, Rabbinical School. And then I stayed in the area. I was in New Hampshire for a while. Then we moved to, at least for a year, in Panama when I got married with my wife, with Cynthia. Then we went back to LA, back then to Marblehead, where we met. And we had so many great, not only conversations, but we'll talk more about the project that we did together, the Mana project. And then after that, I moved to Florida, and now I am in New Orleans, working here since 2.5 years ago. And boy, time flies. I mean, I'm telling you, it's almost 5 years since I moved from Marblehead, but I have wonderful memories. We were there for 7 years, almost 7 years together.
Yeah. Okay.
So who are you?
Yeah. So, Bixby is the last name. And so like I said, it was 11 years ago, actually, that I started at Clifton Lutheran Church. And this was my first call. So I'm a Lutheran minister. I have had the occasion and opportunity to work with a lot of different folks throughout my life. Actually, variety is kind of the theme of my life. We moved a ton growing up. Although you're not my first Panamanian, I have to say one of my earliest school friends was in Miami, Florida, who was a little Panamanian boy. He and I were good friends together. But anyway, so yeah, because I've had such a variety of experiences throughout this country and throughout my ministry, I really appreciate getting a chance to meet with people who have unique perspectives. And I sensed that immediately when I met you, actually, was that you have something, it's incredibly wise and worth listening to. And so I want to thank you for this opportunity to do this podcast together. And we're going to, maybe should we say a little bit about the goal of why we're here and what the topics are that we're hoping to address, not only in this session, but in further sessions as well?
Absolutely. I just want to say, every time I speak with you, I go to my wife and say, man, Jim is so wise. He's so smart. So the sentiment is mutual.
Yeah.
So I hope that folks out there, whoever's listening to this, then will be able to take a little bit of what we end up benefiting from our mutual conversations, and the well of knowledge that we just gather waters from. We just drink from those fountains of knowledge from our traditions, and also from other things. We're not only going to talk here about Judaism and Christianity. We're going to talk about philosophy or literature, whatever we could be talking about. Hey, what did you watch this week? Like what has influenced you in your sermon writings or whatever is inspiring us. So that's part of one of the purposes of our podcast.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that this is contextual to the lives that we're all kind of collectively living these days. Even in doing this job now for 11 years here, and for all the time in which you've been a rabbi, we've seen seismic cultural shifts that have a lot to do with technology, and with platforms and algorithms, and we'll go through all those things. But it's a crazy time to be alive, to be witnessing all those things happening. And I don't know if you sense it, but I do. There is a growing feeling that spirituality somehow is not a peripheral matter or a personal thing or something to the side, but indeed that it needs to be attended to regularly amidst all that change, some of which is change that we don't acquiesce to, change that people are saying that's bad for my spirit, and yet and yet it is pervasive. So how do we recapture a sense of the holy and recapture a sense of the self and a sense of purpose as those things are stripped away from us? That's I think that in a number of sessions we're going to get our way around to attending to some of those matters.
Yes. There's a saying from a movie. I think it's called Southland Tales. It's a funny movie. It's like, apparently the future is more futuristic than we ever thought of. So how do we deal with this futuristic future that defies even all of the science fiction craziest dreams happening right now at a speed that is really vertigo inducing? And we are going to need some grounding to this fast-paced tornado almost of technology thrown at us, how it's going to change society, relationships, the psyche, how it is changing. Even before, when we were discussing what's going to be our first topic, and right away AI, right? That's like everybody's in vogue topic. But even before AI, just like the usage of cell phones and the dynamic that changes relationships, dating, gathering information. The world is now at your fingertips. How does that affect your psyche and your spirit? So, thinking about the name we're gonna call this podcast, you came with a good name. What is the name?
What's old is new again.
What it's old is new again, and that is exactly what we want to capture. Actually, when we return the Torah in our services every week, every Saturday, there's a beautiful expression. We say Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, which means renew our days like the days of old. That's what we're going to look for. How can we renew our lives, face the changes by looking into the past? Doesn't mean we're going to go back and live like in the past. Like definitely none of us wants to become, maybe, I don't know, I like technology free and maybe go like the Amish and do some butter churning and some fence building. If that's what you want, that's what you want. Good for you. But I think, how do we balance the input of technology and how AI and how we keep faithful to our traditions, to the spirit, and what can we learn from the wisdom of millennia of people who were here before us? And as they say, there's nothing new under the sun. Maybe the technology looks a little bit different, but these problems have been around before. So how do we cope? How do we challenge those problems in front of us?
Indeed. I think that in many ways, there's an irony to us doing this as it is on the platform that we've chosen. So if you're listening to us, I won't say what the name of it is until they give us some money and choose to be a sponsor. But particular platform we're using involves a lot of artificial intelligence. And the platform is useful for that very reason. It helps to minimize background noises, because here on Humphrey and Hereford Street, there is the occasional truck that drives by in the middle of my podcast. But I rather like that there are ways in which you can use AI to increase human flourishing. There should be applicable uses for it. However, if we believe that we are at its mercy, or any of these things we're going to talk about, then we have diminished the human spirit and the human will and the human ability to determine what is good and right and should be in place in our communities. It is interesting because, as you said, this is a perennial issue. This is not like we just woke up for the first time in human history to something like this before. The chief documents of both of our traditions are written documents, right? And both of those written documents came probably from some orality, from some oral stories. And that was the primary technology of the transmission of ideas back in the day. And believe it or not, there was some suspicion about this new technology of writing and whether or not it was itself potentially spiritually harmful,
You're
or
gonna ruin people's memories. They're not gonna remember the whole Bible or the Odyssey because everything's written. You're gonna consult with it, right? So,
sure. And there were economic influences to that too, right? There was a job in your community that was the storyteller, the rememberer of the stories, and the transmission of that. That's practically culture wide. But yet there were the creation then of a new class of people, the scribes, and how much control do they technologically have then on the transmission of the story as well? So this is not a entirely new conversation, and I kind of appreciate that.
that makes me think of your tradition as Lutheran. Like the proliferation of Lutheranism was thanks to a new technology, or was like proliferating, which was the printing press, and now everybody could have a Bible and study it and read it. You didn't have to wait years for somebody to copy a manuscript of the Bible. Now everybody could at home get their own Bible or
That's
other
right.
documents, right? So
That's
yes,
right.
we're not like going to go against the technology like so many people. It's funny to read, like when electricity appeared, some people were saying that's going to be dangerous, it's going to affect our bodies. Or when cars came out, like, oh, those exceeding speeds of 20 miles per hour is going to affect our bones and our bodies.
Sure.
Every technology has had its
classically,
detractors, right? Like
totally classic. I mean, of course, the case of the car, I think, is particularly interesting because both cars and bicycles, the people who were the most think of the children was, of course, always women. So they said this is going to have a deleterious effect on the morality of our women, on their ability. It might actually hurt their bodies. It be driving a car and crush their wombs such that they won't be able to have children. Will destroy all of society in a generation. And
yes,
that did not happen to be true.
So, however, AI seems like it's not just a tool or just a technology. They're making it sound, and I'm not an expert. I know people who are experts, and the way they talk about it, it's funny. It's like they're like evangelizing people, almost like they have experienced something transcendental. Some talk about we are not creating a new tool, but creating a new species, like a silicon digital based species who's going to be smarter. We'll talk about what is smart and intelligence, but that faster and in a way will replace us. You shared with me something fascinating. Maybe you can talk a little bit by Yuval Harari, who talked about the AI immigrant. Tell us a bit about that, because you shared it. So I want you to tell me more about it.
Well, I have to say that this was on the Ezra Klein podcast, and he has some really incredible things to say there that you may or may not agree with. Actually, Rabbi David, I don't know how you feel about some of his comments. He also wrote and talked about the use of artificial intelligence in Israel's strikes in Iran and the morality in that case too. So yeah, there's a sense by which we're actually going really fast into this stuff. And yeah, I don't want to, I think you should actually listen to that for yourself when you do get the chance. Everyone should, because to be honest, I kind of forget his whole arguments. Maybe you if you wouldn't mind summarizing it.
Okay, sorry, do you want to put you on the spot? But one of the things, like, we're all afraid of the immigrant. Not all, but many people are afraid of the immigrant. It's like, what are you afraid of the immigrant? A lot of times, like, oh, the immigrant's going to take your jobs. Well, guess what? A lot of AI is replacing many people's jobs. And there was other things that you're afraid of the immigrants. And one of them, it was even like, oh, dating your children. Like, oh, guess what? You might be in a few generation or so, somebody dating an artificial intelligence. I mean, right now, again, all of this sounded like science fiction just a few years ago. So who knows how fast this is happening.
But so thank you for jogging my memory on that. I appreciate that now, because I agree with where you're going. The chief thing there is, I think that we're going to eventually have to talk about ontology. We're going to have to talk about how much being do we ascribe to the artificial intelligence, because those things that you're speaking about there are discriminations based on ontology, right? Like, I don't want my daughter dating an AI thing because I don't think the AI is real. So I don't want her going out with him because I don't, is that a worthwhile discrimination, for instance? Is it worthwhile for us to say, we should afford economic rights to these AI models? Well, if that's taking away from the jobs of human beings who I ascribe greater ontology to, then yes, right? One of the things that we always get when you take a church history course is they're going to start by talking about the Holy Roman Empire, right? And they begin by saying that the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. That's the classic thing. So when we're talking about artificial intelligence, I'm suspicious right away that we shouldn't start our conversation by saying that it's neither artificial nor intelligent.
Right. It's why we're feeding it with, like the background of who controls the algorithms, the digital platforms, the programmers, although they're not even talking about programming them, but like feeding. But again, you're giving them all this data and biases. There's already conversations
Precisely.
about the bias that the AI can have. Right.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's worth remembering. Yeah.
Talking about the Holy Roman Empire, like actually I read the Pope Leo's
yes,
Magnifica Humanitas.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say it's the first time I read like a full document of the church. It's like
how'd it go?
As for you as Lutheran and me as a Jew, I don't know what's more heretical to do. But I I was so impressed. The reason I ended up with It's Fun is not only the topic of AI. Somebody was talking with a fellow priest here in New Orleans, and he said like they mentioned that he quoted Tolkien. I think he was quoting Gandalf, and I'm one of my favorite books is Lord of the Rings, and like, oh, okay, I need to read what the Pope said if you're talking about Gandalf. And I really loved how he frames opens the debate about AI is that as a tool we have two choices, and he uses some biblical imagery. We're either constructing the Tower of Babel, right, from Genesis 11, right, the Tower of Babel, where it's our egos taking us to try to be like God, and we're stepping on whoever's on the way. We just want to go to the top, and it will be a few companies, a few people, making all the money, controlling all the data, right, information, using us just as our whole body as data. Or are we going to use the model of Nehemiah of reconstructing the builds of Jerusalem, the walls of Jerusalem, rebuilding Jerusalem, right? Is this a communal project where we're all going to benefit? We're all going to be in a cause that it's holy, that it protects us, that gives us more dignity for human life. So
that really
I found
is
a beautiful, beautiful analogy from our sources.
I think that I've read the document as well, and I think that he beautifully draws that line and that distinction with clarity. And in many ways, Rabbi, I think that's part of why we're here today. I think that is our goal, is to assert the possibility of that spirit enhancing project over and against what I do have to say is currently I lean more towards the idea that the way that this is being set up is in a Babel orientation.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why it is worthwhile for us to be having these conversations and talking about what kind of structural changes would need to be happening if we were to make a shift to that's the first Bible study I ever taught, by the way, was Ezra and Nehemiah. We went through, and I consider that to be totally undertaught in Christian circles, especially because it is truly beautiful. It's one of those stories that carries with such astonishing leaps in history. It reminds us that great things indeed are possible and have happened before. Things that people weren't even prepared for, and that they can happen again.
Right. So what's bothering us, at least me? Like, I know people who are into technology, people who I love, relatives, and the way they're preaching about it is like, hey, guess what? You'll be able to build your whole company, and you'll be able to fire all the people who do all the departments, all the graphic designers and the accountants. You can fire them, and you'll make more money. Yay. And everybody goes, of course, if you're a business owner, but what about all those people who you are firing? I once read a philosopher talking about, all these revolutions of the 20th century, the socialism, taking the Nazis, they all appealed to the worker. All those posters were about the workers. Now you're going to have a new situation where it's going to create social distrust and chaos. And guess what? It's about not having workers. Like, you're useless now. There's no place for you in society. And then they promise there'll be free money or crypto. And that's even worse. You're going to be a society of leisure, of a society of play, of hedonism, of everything's being done by machines. If really the promise is that everybody, which is like, what's the difference between that and a socialist utopia? Like, nobody has to really work, or you just press some buttons for a few moments and then everything's automated. That's dystopian. That sounds horrible. Like, you sound like you're going to make more money, but as our traditions tell us, sometimes that lure of easy money or faster money or more money, it's usually the paving for bad places and bad dark paths. So
Sure.
that's one of my concerns on this promise of easy life.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe even larger than that, I think, is just that nobody's articulated yet what a vision would look like that is post that scarcity model. And evidently AI is going to be able to produce that, although I have my suspicions that it might not. I think it might also produce surpluses that are particular to the class that creates and owns the resources behind AI. So I'm a little suspicious of the argument that we're going to have lower grocery prices at the end of an AI revolution. I kind of think that we won't. But regardless, even if that does remain true, sketch out for me, please, people of big tech, what am I doing at the end of your end game? Like, what am I doing with my life then? What sort of purpose or reason do I have? What society have we created then? And is it one that involves human flourishing, spiritual flourishing, or is it one that closer resembles kind of serfdom of entrenched power that will then no longer ever be able to be challenged because the immense resources that AI will be shoring up behind them, so that there really is no assailing. We will never storm the Bastille ever again because the walls will be too high after they're done with this. That's my concern. Yeah.
I hear people say, well, those are other people's jobs. They'll always need a human to do my job. But that sounds like it's not exactly true. Like, oh, doctors, well, maybe a robot will come with a better analysis and it goes all the way. Well, they'll still need clergy. Well, maybe there's like a rabbi bot or like a pastor bot, and this robot will like analyze your whole, life story in a better, more efficient. Who knows? But what is still going to be needed? I think that's part of what we are trying to explore in this podcast.
Yeah.
I saw just a funny joke. I've seen it in two versions. One was written, the other one had a cartoon, but it was the cartoon version had George Jetson from the Jetsons, and he had Rosie the robot. She was painting a piece of art while George Jetson was cleaning the floor. And I read once that when I dreamed about AI and robots, it was for them to do the laundry and the cleaning so I could have more time for writing and art. Now they're doing the art and the writing, and I'm stuck with doing the laundry and the cleaning. So what are we going to do? And there's this term called humanities, right? The humanities, right? So what are we going to do? Like, you and I have children. What are we going to do to train our children to retain their humanity while the machines might end up doing our stuff?
Yeah, that's the key factor, isn't it? I mean, I don't think there's any way we have this conversation that doesn't eventually circle around to virtue. And to say that there is now a need for a revitalization of the virtues. And this is to say that you put a limit on how much time you spend on your screen, for instance, and you impose that as a discipline. And then what that is taught and passed down as virtues are supposed to be. They're supposed to be emulated and then passed down. I know a lot of parents who, upon hearing that, are going to be scared out of their mind because they don't know that they have cultivated yet the virtues themselves that they want to see passed down to their children. And, I don't particularly want to enumerate exactly what those all are, because there's an element of every family will have to figure out for themselves what that looks like. I don't have to work with AI on the regular in my job. I know some people, like my wife, for instance, who does a lot of big data work in evaluation. that AI is tremendously helpful for her. And if she doesn't use it, there's again, we're talking about the systems we're in. If she doesn't use it, the companies that she works with will go with a contractor who does, because they're going to be immensely cheaper to work with.
Of course. Yeah, the idea is like, I once heard AI is not going to take away your job. Somebody using AI is going to take away your job. So
right.
And I know
And I
in
mean-
science, for example, I recently was talking with somebody who they're studying something inside cells. And by using AI, they were going to save years of data processing. So I'm not, I'm not vilifying it. I'm just on the other side, like arts, for example, when I watch, admire paintings or movies made completely with AI, right? My wife is a graphic designer, among other things, and a photographer, and she shared the other day like a funny meme online, like if your event is done with an AI flyer, I'm not going to your event. So here's a call for churches and synagogues, like, please, I know it's faster, you might save a few pennies, but you're taking away the human element of making your flyer or your graphics. I know it's tempting. The other question was like, are clergy using AI for writing their sermons? Like, I know I've been starting to read online so many things, like, hold on a second, now everybody writes the same, and now everybody uses dashes. Nobody was using a dash, like the little hyphens. Suddenly everybody's everybody writes like ChatGPT. So I sometimes use it, I have to admit. Because I'm like, oh no, ChatGPT. When I use it? For translation. Sometimes I'm too lazy to think in English, so I just want to write in Spanish. And I look, and they're like, hey, you know what? That's 2.5 pages. I need 3 pages. Can you suggest another paragraph? And it comes with a beautiful thing. There you go. Thank you. It helped. But do I do the whole sermon? Like, think for me a sermon for this week. Oh, no. Because then what's the point? It's a question of who are we? What are we here for? Right? So don't write your sermons on social on
My
GPT
Lord, no.
or Gemini, guys, please. Like it's not, it's gonna affect you personally. Your soul's gonna be drained a little bit if the machine is doing it for you.
I totally. I can't imagine even fiddling around with that. It's almost an addiction that you have to be careful of what your first puff is going to be, because you do start to have a dependency then, and it normalizes that interaction.
As a language tool is beautiful. Like I've done also, like I have a class tomorrow night and I have this document. I only found it in Aramaic or in Yiddish. I can't even translate Yiddish and Aramaic. I'll have to go with a dictionary. It's a little rusty there. Put it there. It translates in beautiful English, beautiful Spanish, beautiful Portuguese, whatever language you have. So yeah, it is a beautiful, powerful, unique tool. There is going to be a line where like, okay, hold on. Are you going to do the whole work for me? Are you going to get rid of all my team, all my staff? And that's the line I'm afraid of people crossing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you said a wonderful thing just now. You used the word language. There's a number of different threads that I could pick up on there, because you guys always rich stuff to say. But maybe we want to talk a little bit about the fact that what we're really discussing when we're talking about AI is LLMs. These are large language models. And I will confess also to not being anything other than an extraordinarily interested person in this. By no means have expertise. But the one thing that I do believe that I share with my ignorance is that the other people who are working on AI also have that level of ignorance. Nobody really knows what it is that we're talking about, because it's a black box. It is the totality of what they've managed to data scoop, which seems to be most everything. It seems like they basically were able to argue in front of justices that they need everyone's data, and whatever protections and privacy that were actually legally imposed, they somehow were able to step around because they need it for their model, and their model evidently is so important that we need to pursue it. So that is its own side conversation to have about how that all went down and where our democratic rights went in that moment. But the fact is that all of this human stuff speaking to one another is really what it is. And that invites some speculation about the holiness of the project, because that's a lot that it's drawing from. It's a lot of human spirit that goes in there, I can already see that there are some people who are having pseudo-religious interactions with it because of that sort of mystical sense of totality and the underspirit of it. Um, at the same time, do you remember when these chatbots were first coming out and they were not tested, and they also included the totality of human vulgarity too, right? And they were racist. These chatbots they drew a lot from like the 4chan world and 8chan, all that. So it was just disgusting stuff
There
that
was
they were
one
saying.
that after 10 minutes of being active or alive, it became anti-Semitic.
That's right.
It's
That's
like,
right.
oh, it took a while, like 10 minutes. Good for you, robot.
But that was a reminder there that stuff is also embedded in here. What's the difference between those early days and now? Well, it's the marketability, right? So I think we have to understand that already there is another force at work here, which is the market. And the market saying, the racist AI chatbot, the anti-Semitic chatbot, that doesn't sell. That's actually bad PR. So they managed to somehow tame it using the rules of the market. And I think that that's also fascinating, that we should eventually kind of try to uncover what are those rules. And those are forces that are also shaping the development of this future-inducing technology. I'd like to know what those rules are, if it's going to be shaping my future, about what is and what can be said and what's allowed into the model.
Right. One thing that also I remember from Pope Leo's encyclical was that just like air and water and other natural resources belong to all humanity, right? What about data? It's part of this world. All these algorithms, right? All this information, they should belong to all of us, not to certain private companies or certain individuals then who are going to profit into the billions and trillions of dollars.
I don't know that many of those thinkers would agree. I know that at least Nestle would not agree with Pope Leo and his assertion that water is a natural right.
Right.
And they have stated so openly in court.
Well, those socialist religious people like who want water.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think that's why these are things worth interrogating.
But he talks about disarming AI, and doesn't mean like making it obsolete or unplugging it, if that analogy still works. But it's not about preventing it. It's about be cautious of preventing it from dominating humanity. That's the part that, and everybody warns people who work the AI for years have seen, once in a while there's somebody coming in like, I saw some very dangerous things, and they become opponents to AI, right? So
after they make their millions, by the way, that's
right.
Most of these people have the moral high ground only after which to be honest with you, I say that not as some critique of their morals. I say that that's the system, is that the strong incentives that are at work keeping this rolling towards the Babel direction, those need to be understood and dismantled before we can have any real conversation. Because the very people who know the most about it, who are the most alarmist, also developed it under what I think they would probably consider duress, that they had to do it because either somebody else would or else their family would starve.
Yep. Somebody once explained to me once, like, it's like a game and it's very hard to get out of the game. You need to keep pushing and going forward and forward. And it becomes almost addictive. And then one day you realize, what is the meaning of all this? And that's going back to, okay, let's go look back. Let's go at the roots. Let's go at some other type of meaning making. And that's, in a way, our religions, our traditions, the past, or other models, alternative ways of living. So so freeing it from the monopoly, right? Opening it to the access for everybody. So it's part of the goal here. But I don't, knowing human patterns and human nature, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
I would agree. Yeah, and it's not. It's also not going to happen organically, right? I'm conscious of the fact that this is playing out almost as a game theoretics, and until we change the nature of the game behind it, we would be silly to expect a different outcome or result. So I don't know, maybe call me a Hegelian, because this might be the moment where we need a spirit. The spirit should rise up of humanity to assert itself and assert its will, over and against a future that we don't want to see happen. I mean, there really is no other way to change this unless we actively assert ourselves and our wishes. What I'm concerned about is that we are being asked to do that, to assert boldly what we want as a future at a time where I feel that people have the least capacity to do it. People are worn out. People have been so defeated in so many arenas, so many times that they don't feel that they actually have a voice or that they have power. And I want to be conscious of the fact that religions have not always been helpful in that too. I think that of many of my studies of religion have been studies into how human beings can be pacified into accepting their lot, as opposed to being liberated into having agency in their lives and in the world. That they would, I would assert that that's what we want to do. Actually, we want to see our God as a liberator God who calls God's people forth out of slavery into themselves, into their true selves, which is a free and liberated self. AI is a dangerous dominator. It can be anyway. And the future that we're talking about is one in which, I don't know, maybe it happens organically. I've heard a lot of people who are hopeful, maybe even accelerationists, say things like, we have to let this crisis play out on its own, come to its full conclusion, and when all that there is to watch is AI on your television, when all these things, then it will be time for a renaissance, for a revolution, and people will organically want to experience authentic things again.
Let's hope so. I've heard stories in a few universities now that were having commencements and graduations that the students were chanting FAI, right? So, well, it's interesting. It's like people in their early 20s realizing, hold on, why are we graduating if this AI is gonna do all of our jobs, right? So,
sure.
I want to share a story with you. You probably have heard the story of the golem, right? In Judaism, there's a famous story, the legend of the golem, this creature that was created from mud using the magical mystery powers of the Kabbalah and the unknown. And this hulk of mud becomes alive. Right? And the rabbi writes in his head the word emet, which means truth. And this creature becomes like a human being-like. He walks like a man. He, can work, do physical feats. What made the golem not human in that story was the incapacity of language. He could not talk, right? And then it gets out of control, and its creator has to put him back to sleep, going back to the earth. And the method they do is they erase the letter Aleph, which has no sound on itself. And it just emet becomes met, which means dead. So it becomes once again the lump of inert mud. Now, I find that story very powerful as an analogy for what's going on, but it's a reversal because the golem was not human because it could not speak. But now we have a system that it's all about language. It's all about language. It might be even able to speak better than we do. It corrects our sermons. It translates our sermons. It says things that you'd never even... So what makes that not a golem, right? What makes it not a human? And it also resonates on the idea of truth. And that's something we could talk in some other episode, the idea of post-truth world that we live in, right? We have all these alternative narratives telling you this is truth, this is also truth. And so there's relativism of truth. So in a way, this hyper informative, digital world, that we call post-truth, has killed truth. Emet is met. Emet, the truth has died in a way. They're trying to kill the truth from us. And how do we bring it back to life? How do we make some things truth with a capital T?
Let's dedicate our next session to that, because I think that's a great question. And but I want to hit your point harder there that you just said about language and being and truthfulness. This was one of the main reasons why I wanted to make sure we started on this topic, when machines can speak, what does that mean for the speech that we do or that we have? And in the reversal of the golem story, we become the golem, right? We now call into question, because of this, how much of our own essence and how much of our own speech is it any different than this artificially constructed algorithm? Again, we don't even know the algorithm. We don't know what went behind thinking this. All we know is that when we read it and an AI said it, we thought, that's pretty good. That's good enough that it'll pass. And if it passes, kind of passing the Turing test here, right? If it passes, that calls into question, well, what makes it any different than the speech that I do? And I'm a broken record on this. I always say the algorithm is external. We are internal to it. We are within already the algorithm. All of the ways in which we choose to say the things that we do and choose to put our bodies in various places and commit ourselves to various concepts, that's because we are already being algorithmically dictated to a certain extent. So long before the AI rolled out, we were already a little bit robotic. Indeed, I always think it's funny, the origin of that word robot is itself a Slavic word. And the word Slavic is itself derived from the same thing of slave, right? So it's 3 steps of slavery, of people who have been told that you're the slave, people coming up with a word for the robot, which means slave. So
you just nailed it. That's precisely my concern. Like, is not that the machine can become more human-like. That's up to the tech people. The problem we are addressing with is that people are going to become machine-like.
That's right.
That our thinking, our way of analyzing the world. I was recently reading about, even relationships. Like, and people know that there's a rise on polyamory and people not dedicating full time to a committed relationship. And why? Because that takes time and effort. And we don't live in a time that you put too much time or effort if you just have to put a prompt and things are going to happen for you. So you might need to dedicate a lot more of time and effort. And we're losing that capacity of dedicating that even to another human being. Among other things, there's multiple things that are happening to the younger generations, attention spans, interests. Again, so I was asking before, like, what do we do with our children? Like, I know what we started doing with our children is like, do more art. It's now painting time, and even in making a mess time, or go out in a garden and learning the names of the plants and what they're good for. Yeah, you could Google that, but it's beautiful that you know it, that there's something connecting you back to earth. Like walk barefoot and touch the grass and let your senses elevate you and rediscover God and the divine, not only in a book, not only in chantings that happen inside our buildings, in a church or a synagogue, but in this world that God created for us to be the ones who tend it and love it and care it. So I think that's going to be hopefully part of that revolution, is becoming more nature-oriented, nature-based, learning also, the arts, the humanities, and try to find, there must be a ghost or a spirit behind the human art that might be lacking in the ghost in the machine, right? Or if there's a ghost in the machine. It's also questioning, what is intelligence? You brought something fascinating, like, what is intelligence? Like, we used to judge intelligence, like, oh yeah, you can play the violin like a virtuoso, or you can play chess like a master. Guess what? The computer now does it with a programming. So were we algorithmic all along? Was our judgment of what was quote unquote intelligence right? Or there's something deeper? Maybe emotional intelligence is what's gonna define us as more human, or the capacity of love with dedication, another human being, with time, with presence, with fully being there versus looking at a screen while simultaneously raising the children. All these questions, I think we're going to have to explore together.
Yeah, I agree. Those are great questions. I'll tell you my answer to your question before too, about what do we do to stay grounded, and personally. Sunday for me has become now a day where we're trying to enforce Sunday dinners too. So this goes back, if any of the Italians in our audience are going to immediately know what that means, because that's Sunday sauce, right? That's not only church in the morning, which I think is extremely important, but it's also gathering community, real community, like your family. And maybe that's even people who aren't blood related to you, but nevertheless, you're going to have a meal together, and that's going to ground you and connect you.
That's the Shabbat. That's the Sabbath. Where you can do it on a Friday night. You can do it on a Sunday. You actually gave me once a wonderful book about the Sabbath written from a Christian perspective. Like, oh, I'm glad that this should be spreading more and more, that this is not a Jewish idea. It's a human idea. Like, what is a Shabbat? What is a Sabbath? It's precisely what we need right now. It's getting off the treadmill, getting off that machinery of production, of consumption, of changing the world, and not doing to the world, but being in the world. So it's a day that you should dedicate to your family, whether you're making your dinner or you're playing board games, hopefully away from screens, just one-on-one talk with your family, with your loved ones, go to church or go to synagogue, go to your mosque, go to whatever place you find other humans. And, it's funny, like what we do for a living, like if you go every week to a building and sing out there into the ether to God, it's very unpractical. There's no production. It's like where you're quote unquote wasting time, but you're like, I'm singing the same songs from 100 years, 2000 years.
Yeah.
But there's a beauty in it that I'm doing nothing. But I'm doing so much in that nothingness, in that no producing, but being one with God, or with nature, with the people.
I think that that's a wonderful way of setting expectations. And that might be another thing that we want to kind of conclude with, because there are people who I think have been getting engaged in our faith communities more regularly because of this very matters. And I want to talk about what the expectations are as you come into one of our spaces or another one. And it's different than other like online sort of things where everything is perfect, right? Where everybody is absolutely been photoshopped and everything is fine and every interaction is normalized. You'll be stepping actually into a lot of imperfection, and people should come to expect that, because that's reality. Reality is that we'll sing a song, we'll get the note wrong every once in a while, right? But as we sort of deprogram ourselves away from this digital world, this algorithmic thing, we have to expect imperfections in reality. So, get yourself ready for that too. That when we do our Sunday dinners, for instance, you will have boring conversations with people, and that's okay, because that's real life. And maybe in many ways that's part of this project too. This virtue building project is to get people to understand and to have some resiliency for experiencing the unmediated real life, as opposed to this highly addictive form of participation in a perfect world.
I hope everybody who's listening has enjoyed. I definitely have grown richer in spirit and in knowledge just by this encounter. I hope it's been also enriching for all of you. And tell your friends about it. There's this pastor and this rabbi talking about AI and other contemporary topics and old topics as well. There.
Okay. Well, you go run for your life, Rabbi.
Run. Maybe I have to run. Have a wonderful day, my friend, and to everybody out there.
All right. Be well.